Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the best DataMonsterTV session. This session is with three of us, and we will be talking about NoSQL. At the SQL conference, there will be a NoSQL conversation. My name is Nico Neugebauer, and I am your unfriendly host. And I have here with me two of the world's best NoSQL specialists. And you can see by this one how happy they are to share all the exciting things they expect to talk about. So, gentlemen, why don't you present yourself?
My name is Scott Klein, CTO of Cloud and Devices. Here to help Nico understand everything about NoSQL.
Yeah, my name is Andre Essing. I'm from Microsoft Germany, and I'm working as a technology solutions professional, which is a mix of consulting, seller, and architect.
That sounds complicated.
It is.
It must be very complicated. So, why do you think somebody had this brilliant idea that at a SQL conference somebody would need to talk about NoSQL? Sounds like a forbidden talk. So I suggest we start with what is in NoSQL, so our viewers can understand what we are talking about.
So, in my understanding, when you have a SQL database, you have tables, you have a schema, you know how your data is written to the database files, in which data types you have. In NoSQL, it's a little bit different because you have just, normally it's JSON or some other different data types or types of saving data. And there's no schema. The database is schema agnostic, so you can just add columns as you like without changing schema in the database. Or you can change data types, perhaps, or how you save the data in the database itself with each write and request you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think he's right. At a high level, I have structured and unstructured. Where in relational, my structured data, right? My data and my schema is, very much tied at the, joined at the hip, they say. Where in the NoSQL, it's schemaless. So, and I think that's why it appeals to developers is, quick access. I don't care about the schema, right? Very fast. I think there's, but pros and cons to both.
No, okay. So, we defined what for us is the NoSQL. Why don't we take a look what are the companies who are offering this solution and what are the solutions that Microsoft is offering in the NoSQL space? So,
well, from a Microsoft perspective, right, many years ago, many being, when Azure first came out, they had Azure Storage, right? So you had tables and blobs. Yeah, for the most part, right? Which is just kind of for tables was a key value pair, right? Recently, the last 1 or 2 years, they announced, DocumentDB, which is JSON documents. Document store. Then they've gone to, that was renamed as they added features to CosmosDB, which you now have Graph and Mongo and MongoDB and things like that, right?
Even the key value store from the blob storage?
Yep, that's
added it also?
Yeah. So, from a Microsoft perspective, you have those. I think there's still some discussion as to when you would use what. I think there's still some confusion around that. But those are the offerings, right?
Yeah, nothing to add. So it's a cloud service that you can use.
So you're talking about the CosmosDB?
We are talking about the CosmosDB, right?
Yeah.
So it's a cloud service you can use. You don't have to put something in your own data center. So don't have to manage all the hardware, all the software installation stuff. And as Scott said, it's a NoSQL database which offers multiple models and multiple application interfaces which I can use to query my data or write my data to the database.
Okay.
Like one API would be SQL API, or the document SQL API. One is a Mongo, one is a Gremlin Graph API, and so on.
Okay, so I just want to add that for me, actually, the NoSQL starts with the relational database in practice, and I would point to the existence of XML somewhere in the past century on the relational database, and even the latest development, it's not the latest and greatest, but 2016 SQL Server introduced the possibility of working with JSON on the relational and on Azure SQL database level. So you both mentioned the Cosmos DB, and what is Cosmos DB? You mentioned that it's available for already a couple of years. It's been known as the document DB to the most of the viewers, and around 1.5 years ago it was renamed, or actually maybe even last year. Last year it was around build, I believe.
So about a year ago.
It was renamed to Cosmos DB. Have any idea about the different APIs that are available? Can you list them from the Cosmos DB perspective? There was already mentioned the document DB, the original API. Then we went to
MongoDB.
To MongoDB. What is MongoDB actually?
Would you?
Go ahead.
MongoDB is also NoSQL database, a document store NoSQL database which can store JSON files.
Like Cosmos
So
DB.
Like Cosmos DB,
Yeah,
yes,
it's a document
but it's
DB.
another manufacturer, right? So another company who built MongoDB, another company who sells MongoDB or offers it in service.
Okay. Okay, so MongoDB, what else?
Those graphs.
So API of the compatibility with the protocol, with the API that MongoDB application are using. What else?
We have Mongo, we have Document SQL, we have Cassandra in a private preview now.
So Cassandra is the multi-tenant database, open source database, which is quite popular for a huge amount of data and very complex installation. What else?
We have the table API you mentioned.
The
Table API.
Yeah.
Well, would be very interesting topic to see from both of you, your view, the relation with the table storage. What are the advantages and disadvantages of table API? Why we have right now the offer of the table API versus table API in the Cosmos DB, and what are the advantages and the disadvantages of already existing Microsoft Azure solutions which are pointing to the table storage? What else?
We have the Graph API.
So
it's Gremlin API.
Gremlin language for the Apache Tinkerpop, the most popular open source graph database. Any others?
Are we missing something?
Those are the only 4 I know.
So we have Document SQL, we have Mongo, we have the Graph, we have Cassandra, we have the Table API.
I think that's it.
You can use JavaScript
Yeah, so the
in the database itself and so on.
yes, so the native JavaScript store procedures and triggers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So why the Cosmos DB is capable? Or do you know? Can you share what are the reasons how it is capable of supporting so many APIs and trying to be so many things for so many solutions?
I think when you look at the foundation of Cosmos DB, you have just the storage. And the storage is for every API always the same. And above the storage and the compute engine, the database engine, like any other database, like SQL Server also has a database engine somewhere, they have another layer, which is the models, which means it's a columnar model, it's a document model, it's a graph model, and it's a key value model for table API.
Key pair.
And then there's the APIs. I think the idea is to offer the user an easy way to use what he already knows. So
And what they already have.
perhaps there's already a developer who knows Mongo and
Sure.
so he don't has to learn document SQL. So I think that's a cool use case. So also for Cassandra, Cassandra is also another API, another way to save data. So you have another option to save your data in Cosmos DB. So it's not only having another language you could use, also have the possibility to use another way to save data. Like a graph is completely different from a document, right?
Well, if you think about it, look what they did. You know, it goes back to what you're saying, right? Microsoft is saying, oh, you're using this. Let's provide you a cloud-based way to use that. Like, because you know they had an Azure SQL database. Then they said, well, hey, let's do was it Postgres and MySQL, right? So great, you have that. Now run that in the cloud, right? So I think with Cosmos DB, it's the same thing. Great, you're using Cassandra, or you're using Mongo, well, why don't you run that in the cloud, right? We'll provide the platform for you.
So what would be, so because we already mentioned the fact that we can already use the XML or JSON for the relational databases, what would be the advantages, the reasons for developers not to use the JSON that is stored within the relational databases and go to any other solutions such as a Cosmos DB?
Okay, well, I'm going to throw my opinion out there, right? I
That's
think
why you're here.
All right. Okay, yeah. Well, I say that because I might be wrong, but this is just my opinion, right?
Fair enough.
I think the XML data type will probably go away, right? It's just too slow, too cumbersome, too heavy. I think that'll go away. If you look at JSON, and is it? Am I thinking? And didn't they introduce Python as well in SQL Server?
No, Python is a language.
Yeah, language, but I thought they anyway. So I think you're going to see that as a replacement for XML, and I think also for the ability to. It'd be interesting to know how much JSON is being, how that is being used. Right? People wanted XML. I think you'll see JSON, but I think the difference is that if I already have a document data store, right, and I'm looking for something lightweight in a relational database, I can use JSON. Okay, but if I'm looking for something very scalable and I need some, something scalable and massive in the cloud, cloud-based, then I'm obviously going to look at Cosmos DB. I think those are two separate. I think they're very separate in how you'll use those.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I think it's also different as when you look at SQL Server, how you save the JSON. And there are different ways to use it in SQL Server, right? So
which are?
So you can convert a normal table and use this output or write the output from normal select as in JSON.
Right.
So output select as JSON. You can input JSON
into a table,
and you can write a JSON into a binary format.
No, I would not even consider the relational database because this would be a completely distinct topic, at least from my point of view.
And that's why I said I think it'd be interesting to see how that's being used, right?
It's completely three different use cases you have, or two. So putting JSON into a normal table back into a relational database, or using it just in a field, in a cell, where you just put in this as a JSON.
So for me, to my understanding, this is in some certain terms, there is a comparability or potential for comparability between storing a data into a lob JSON field and storing the data within the Cosmos DB, any other NoSQL solution that is using NoSQL, because both of you have already mentioned the advantages for the speed, for the performance advantages, which are quite questionable from my personal point of view. But I would like to understand your view. What are the use cases for going into the Cosmos DB and using it versus storing the same JSON data, not doing it the correct way into the relational table, but being this incredible flexibility that you store whatever you want?
Let me get into two use cases. I think they're the in my opinion, the two best use cases for it. The first use case I always talk about is a product catalog. When you see something like a big web shop or something, and you have a lot of products. So what will you do in a relational database when you have a product which only has 3 or 4 values that are the same, like article name, you have a code for the product, a shortcut perhaps, or a group of products where you group this product in. And then there are also the values that only belongs to the product, like when you have a computer, it's CPU, it's memory, it's disk, what else? And when I have this glass here, it tells me not the CPU or the memory, then I have different values in there. It's like which color, which size, what's printed on the glass. So it's easier for a developer to do that in a JSON file than in a relational database, because in a relational database you have to, perhaps you have a lot of tables with different schemas, or you have an option parameter table where you have all these small parameters like color and such in, and then link it, and you have to join it, which is normally more cost in a database than when you just do a select, right? When you just query the data. So it could be easier to query the data and be faster, and also to write the data for the developer in a NoSQL database in this way, something like product catalog or similar.
So this is an excellent example of the trying to go a little bit away from the use of the relational schema, but you still. So, what I would like to find out, what would be the good what would be the good use cases for going and storing the JSON schema directly into Azure SQL DB or SQL Server in a virtual machine on Azure, versus going into the Cosmos DB and using the Cosmos DB for the storage and querying. Where do you see the use cases and advantages of going one way versus going the other way?
I think it's easier to query this NoSQL database, because you have to put it into you have to build a schema in the relational database to write in your JSON, right?
Well,
perhaps an ID or something, then the JSON file.
Yeah.
And then you have to get it out, and then you have to read this one. Perhaps this is the result you get back. So in a Cosmos DB or any other NoSQL database, you get directly the result back. So you get directly the JSON, and you query in the JSON, not perhaps cells around it.
But you issue the same JSON path parameters or similar parameters in the relational database, so I don't really see the advantages by the way the data is stored equally. There is, in Cosmos DB, you have an ID, a hidden ID, hidden fields for every entry.
That's right. That's right.
So you still...
So here's the scenario. Here's the scenario. Okay. The only reason I would put JSON in my database is because I have corresponding uncorrelated data in my database, and I want them in one location.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
One location, right? But they thought the same thing about XML. Great, I'm going to put XML in my database, and I have everything right there, right? So that's why I said I wonder how, XML is going away of the dodo bird. I wonder how long it will take for the JSON data type in SQL to go the same. Maybe it's there, but if you look at for the last few years, if you look at all the demos, and this goes to your point, all the demos that Microsoft did to tout, created these end-to-end solutions to tout Cosmos, or it was DocumentDB at the time, but DocumentDB and all these, they had JSON in DocumentDB, they had the data in SQL Server, they had some other data in wherever, right? And here's this, all this data spread out, right? And it was difficult, right? The only reason I would put JSON in my database is because I have related data there, and it would be easy to pull everything out at the same time, right? And maybe I think that's the only scenario I see, and the only scenario that I would put it there, right? And from how much data, I have no idea, right? if I have, if I'm already using Cosmos DB or sorry, if I'm already using Mongo or Cassandra, if I have mass amounts of data, right, I'm going to throw that in Cosmos DB, right? I think I think it depends, right? I think there's certain cases where maybe I just need a little JSON in my relational database, but I think if I have JSON documents and it's not a lot, then I need correlated data in my relational. I will put it in my relational database, right? But if I just have from a massive store, and I just have, I need high performance, and I just have, I have, documents coming in from all sorts of places, and I have this mass, consumer site type of thing, then I would look at Cosmos DB, right? So it kind of goes to it depends, but I think for my use case, if I just have, if I need the data next to each other, I'll put it in relational, right? But I think it's different use cases where if I have this, if I'm an enterprise shop and I've got e-commerce type of thing, I need the high scalability, high value, and I'm in the cloud, right? I'd probably go to Cosmos DB.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's the point, right? So I talked about this product catalog thing, and when you think about that, I think it's when you have a web page or something. Of course, with a shop or what else.
Yeah.
I think it's a no-brainer to say, hey, the whole website is in the cloud. Why not the product catalog also, right? So you could use a cloud service. It doesn't matter if it's Mongo, Cosmos, or something else. So the cloud thing is where you want to start, where your data goes, and where the future goes also. So, and where to store the data? Yeah, of course, when you have related data in a SQL database, sure, it's perhaps easier.
and it's not. I don't think it's not a black and white type of thing, right? Because I could put JSON in Azure SQL Database, but is that the right place to put it? Right, and I think that depends on your scenario. Right, if there's correlated data, and I'm not querying it that much, right, I might throw it in Azure SQL Database. But if I'm heavy read-write, right, then I think there's got to look at performance, got to look at scalability, querying,
Which Azure SQL DB delivers pretty much.
Sure, yes, but from a JSON perspective, right, am I going to get better performance out of Cosmos? Maybe.
That's a good question. Anyone did some real projects on the Cosmos DB? Something that you can compare one against the other?
I personally cannot compare something. I don't know. I never compared myself when I'm querying JSON out of a SQL server is faster than querying JSON through Cosmos DB. From the first feeling, just a feeling, right? So I would say, hey, a native document database like a Mongo, Cosmos DB, what else?
Yep.
It should be much faster serving you as a JSON file and getting it back to you because it's designed for working with this. Well, and in SQL Server, it's designed for relational data, and you have a JSON type, data type, like it. So it's I can't tell you because I don't test it if it's faster or not. I think it's more a use case thing.
I think it's more,
how you want to use your data. Of course, it could be a performance thing, and I think, well, perhaps for a big catalog, when you look at some NoSQL database, especially Cosmos DB, the database is partitioned. Sure, I think you could get better performance out of it when you scale more and more and get bigger and bigger. And also, you have no limitations in size and all that stuff.
Well, you saw that with XML.
So Cosmos DB has no
Cosmos DB has a limit on performance, or it's called request units. It's a unit is measured use, and there's a limit when you first create your Cosmos database catalog. But Cosmos DB offers you unlimited storage and unlimited performance.
So really unlimited?
Really unlimited. It's an offer. It's written down in the documentation.
Okay.
So you can call the support and let them remove the quotas.
And you saw this with XML too. XML data type. Let me put all my XML in there, and then it was like, oh shoot, it's not that big, doesn't perform well, right? do you get, how does that with JSON, right? Do I I'll throw all my JSON documents in there, and how does that perform, and what are the limitations? And I think it goes back to the use case.
I have
right?
some experience with XML and SQL Server.
Yeah.
And I know when you have a lot of XML and SQL Server, it's a high CPU problem that
Yeah.
you get. It uses a lot of CPU to serve and go into the XMLs and get something
Yeah,
out of that. So it's
Yeah, and I haven't done a lot of JSON querying in SQL Server, but I would think that if I have just mass amounts of JSON documents, I think the last place I want to put, and I, not knocking SQL Server, but the last place I want to put those probably is in SQL Server. I think it just goes to, is it available? Yes. Do I want to do some testing on it? Absolutely. But maybe I want to think about using, one of the Azure, like services, right? Just from a performance, scalability, and unlimited capacity type of scenario, right?
it's a little bit like using the right tool for the right use case.
Yes, and great segue, because I think we're skirting the issue here, right? I think we're not talking about why I would use one over the other, right? I think that there's, yes, I think there's purpose. Jason, we talked about this before, right?
You told us if you have related data in relational database, perhaps put it there.
So it goes. I remember when Azure Table, SQL at the time it was SQL Azure, and then table storage came out, right? And SQL Azure was really expensive, right? And table storage was not very expensive, but it was called table storage, and people saw it as a table. So you had, and you still see a little bit of this today, and we talked about this from a developer perspective, right? We still see people would take their relational database and move that to Azure Table Storage, right? And then realize that was the dumbest thing we could have done and moved it back, right?
You can try, but it's not good.
Well, and so yeah, but I think it's the same thing, right? People are like, because why would I, why am I going to the, what does the schemaless option give me? Why would I use a schemaless option over a schema option, right? Obviously, I mean, you talk to anybody in Redmond about SQL Server, SQL Server 2017 is, or 16, probably one of the, let's say 17 because of Linux, but one of the greatest releases of SQL Server, and they'll tell you this in well over a decade, right? So they're putting massive amounts of energy and effort into relational. So there's still a need for relational, but you still have people going, well, these developers going, do I need, right? Well, you need to help people understand when you're using relational and when you're using, because great, I do JSON documents is easy. If I'm using have JSON documents, no brainer. But if I'm going to use, the table API or table storage or things like that, I think there's some confusion there.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
So, since you touched on the topic of the table API and the table storage, where do you see the advantages of choosing one over another?
You mean table storage or table API?
Yes. So, table API of the Cosmos DB?
Isn't that just a wrapper around table storage? I could be wrong. I'm not.
No. It's completely. The data is saved in the Cosmos DB, like normal documents.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just. I think you can, in my opinion, this is also my opinion. I think it's just table storage premium. So you could get more performance out of a Cosmos DB with table API than also table API, than the table storage in the blob storage, and perhaps also not get more performance, also have bigger storage possibilities. So you can save more data in Cosmos DB than in table storage.
Oh, that's true.
You have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
limit
There's
on some. I don't know
there's
the
a- yeah, you
terabytes,
have
but
limits
there's a
in- yeah.
terabyte limit on the blob storage.
You have terabyte limits in Azure Storage.
Yeah, but you have no limits on Cosmos DB.
On Cosmos DB. And I think you get better performance out of Cosmos DB.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think there's both.
Yeah.
That's a little bit like table storage premium
Yeah.
from my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the response time? So you mentioned that the premium storage, you expect the Cosmos DB to be performing better than the table storage would be an advantage point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is again my opinion. I think blob storage has its place.
Of course.
Will it have in the future as well? Its place?
You know what? So, okay, I don't want to go off tangent here, but you got blob storage. Now you have this thing, Azure Data Lake, where there's again no limits, any type of data, right? I wonder if at some point, it's just again, Scott Klein's opinion, if Azure Storage will just sort of go away or be changed into something, because I've got better table storage with Cosmos DB. I got better blob storage with Azure Data Lake. Not want to start any rumors, but how many people are using the Azure blob and table storage now?
Yeah.
Well, for the disk drives for the virtual machines, for example, right?
Yeah. I have also no insights on that, but
Yeah.
as you mentioned, you have
Well,
to
then
take
that's
storage
true.
for some blobs or for the disks. And Data Lake is a complete different system, right? It's an HDFS or web HDFS in the back. And with blob storage, you have the REST API. So I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know
true.
if a virtual machine will ever directly connect to a web HDFS to get some.
Well, okay, but
data
I
disks.
get that, but yes, HDFS. Okay, but I think that's a one case, right? I spin up a virtual machine, my VHD goes in blob
Yeah.
storage. That's one case, right? Everything else, if I'm doing other file types,
You could
right.
put the images, videos for websites, something to load from blob storage. Well, you have a
But if I'm doing
also have a
if I'm
message
doing
queuing.
but if I'm doing analytics on that, I'm going to put that in Azure Data Lake.
So we're coming back to the point that you should be choosing the platform that delivers what is best for your solution.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can use multiple platforms, and such as in the case of the NoSQL, there are not only NoSQL specific databases that you can use.
Yes.
There are, from my point of view, there are huge advantages of going there because of the different consistency models, because of the default using of the automated indexing, which is quite fine for the most of the developers. They don't need to do
Yeah.
any changes. But if they have already existing solutions that are using just a simple single or multiple JSON files, they might be finding themselves on the other side of the spectrum
Yeah.
using a relational database
Sure.
which just stores the
Yeah.
schema. So, and to wrap it all up, I think that it looks like Microsoft has a good offer for all type
All
of the
all
solutions.
scenarios.
For maybe all, maybe not all, but the huge
You got
number.
the 80-20
broad
rule.
scenario you can use.
Yeah. Look, NoSQL, I remember, the NoSQL, and people are like, oh, that doesn't mean SQL. It's like NoSQL, no relational, right? And that's not what it means, right? It's not only SQL type of, right? It goes to your point, right? Microsoft has services and technologies to fit the majority of the scenarios, and you pick which one that fits for your scenarios. Right? NoSQL is not a replacement for SQL.
Always depending on use case,
Size,
speed, whatever you need.
Your needs, performance,
Yeah.
right?
If it's IoT, if it's a website, if it's an app,
Oh
whatever.
yeah, you think about it, right? And that IoT is a great scenario, right? I may have data going into both, relational and non-relational, because I may want to have hot path, cold path scenarios. I may want to do, so it's not one or the other, right? Because I want to do high value processing right now. So I'm going to put that in something that performs a little faster than a relational. But I may want to do some analytics later on, so I'm going to put that in my SQL data warehouse type of thing, right?
But from the other side, the relational databases also have, and Jos de Bruijn,
Yep.
the owner of the in-memory at Microsoft, has already over the past years did a great job listing scenarios even for IoT.
Oh, sure.
How you can use the in-memory as a landing zone with
Yeah.
incredible performance. The same type of the indexes that are used within the Cosmos DB, the BW tree indexes. To store.
I'm not
the
saying
data.
it can't go into relational from it, right? I'm just saying, what's your need?
Exactly.
Right.
So what I want to underline is that there is even it might be a very advantageous, but it's also kind of like a little bit scary maybe for an unexperienced developer, because you can find that the Microsoft data platform can offer you so many solutions for your
Yeah.
problem, and maybe
I'm getting overwhelmed with all the options. What do I do?
we just want to finalize. I would like to thank you, Scott and Andre, for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
And
You're welcome.
And
You're welcome.
please stay with the DataMonsterTV, and there is more awesome content coming up. Thank you.
Later.
Thank you.